When journalist Avery Haines traveled to Iraq to film her documentary 2 Kilometres to Terror, Life and Death Under ISIS, she noticed something significant about the other reporters she was seeing on the front lines. The majority were young, freelance, and female. It's not what one might expect, and so we're happy to welcome Avery Haines to our studio for more on that. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, we got to figure this out here, because at what point, you're over there in the spring in Iraq, at what point did you look around and notice young, freelance, and female too?
Yeah, almost, it's interesting. Obviously, television news and news in general has changed so much in the last decade. But most people, the big networks are in Erbil, which is a long distance away from the front line. And there are a lot of the networks have got their reporters standing on a rooftop overlooking a city that is entirely safe, throwing to clips that have been gathered by cameramen and producers who have gone into the front line. So
it's talk about fake news.
I don't know that it's
not fake news, but you know what I mean.
I hate that term because I just feel like it's used in the wrong. I don't know that it's fake news. I think that it's the reality and the economics of news. Insurance to send people into where I was $10,000 to be insured for that. So news agencies cannot afford to send a whack of people into an area that is so unbelievably volatile. It's just the reality. So what I noticed, and I noticed it, so in Erbil, at a beautiful hotel over drinks, I met a few reporters who were gathering around there. They'd go into the front line every day. We lived down there for a couple of weeks. These were bright, young women.
How old?
I'm going to say late 20s.
20s?
Yeah.
Who, obviously Western?
Most American.
American?
American women. I met a Dutch woman, mostly American women, who had every skill. They weren't the reporter, the television reporter on a rooftop. They were writers, they were producers, they shot their own stuff. So they were really Janes of all trades.
As opposed to Jacks of all trades.
As opposed to Jacks of all trades. Yeah. And so they would often, on their way to get even closer than where we were, to try to infiltrate further into the front line, they would stop at the mosque where we lived, which was about 2 kilometers away. And I would overhear them pushing their fixers and saying, you need to I'm not going to take no for an answer. You're going to find a way to get us in closer. And these are women, the women that I met are essentially self-funded as well, because they've got to find a story and then they pitch to different news organizations, so magazines, newspapers, television stations, and some of them may be kind of stringers for CNN or ABC or NBC, but they're not there with the big comfort of 4 cameramen and producers trailing after them.
Did you get a good sense from them about what compels a 27-year-old single woman from wherever, Idaho, to go all the way overseas to one of the most hellacious places in the world and put their life at risk?
They'd all done even more extraordinary things before that. They'd been in Jordan at camps. They'd done all kinds of things. I don't know if I just happened to run across some extraordinary women. But interestingly, I met one woman, American woman, who had a photographer who also wrote her own pieces, who flew down on her own, knowing nobody, ended up at our mosque, which is a certain kind of tenaciousness that I don't know that I would have had as a young woman. I was blown away by it. And she was really pushing to do a whole bunch of stories on sexual violence that had happened through ISIS. And I was thinking about how that the images that we think of war correspondents are kind of these big guys with lots of flak jackets and big muscles, and they're hard-living, cigar-chomping guys who are telling a certain kind of story that obviously needs to be told about the kind of weaponry that there is and the death and destruction. And I'm wondering whether if there is an influx of young women coming in, whether we'll start hearing more stories with a more female perspective?
Well, I'm glad you went there, because that was going to be my follow-up. If it is, in fact, 20-something young single women who are telling the stories as opposed to these sort of macho, grizzled veterans, is what they're covering different and how they cover it different?
Well, the reality is they still have to sell it to someone, so it all depends on who wants to buy. The woman that I spoke to, who was definitely self-funding, had hooked up with another woman who was setting up kind of a trauma stabilization point, but for sexual violence. And I don't know that that would normally have been top of trade when it comes to war coverage for other news agencies, or whether this was something that would have been, that was more sort of a female-oriented pitch.
Let me do another stereotype here, because there's nothing stupider in this world than a 20-something young man who feels he's indestructible and, may throw caution to the wind. Did the young women that you saw there behave with any kind of naivete about their circumstances, or a sense of indestructibility or that kind of thing?
No, I felt like they had a real respect for the danger, and a respect for knowing when was too much. But I still, all I could think about when I was, would I have done that when I was in my 20s? Probably not. I wish I had, meeting these women, I wish I had done that. I wish I had known that was possible, because, God, what an incredible, extraordinary life to be traipsing around.
Well, yes, but, and here's where I'm going to tap into you being a parent. I mean, you've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
Your oldest kid is probably not that much older than, or younger rather, than the people that you saw there. And I just wondered if there was a part of you that ever said, what are you people doing here? Like, shouldn't you be home somewhere safer, as your mother would have you be?
No, no. And it's interesting, because I had some of the places I've traveled in the world without my children, I've had some sort of backlash of, you're a mom, and should you be putting your life at risk by going to those places? And
which they don't say to dads, but they do to moms.
They don't say it to dads.
Yeah.
They really don't say it to dads. And I look at my 16-year-old daughter and my 21-year-old son and my 13-year-old son, and I think, this is exactly what you should see your mom doing. 100% exactly what you should see your mom doing. The pride that they had. I know they were, and I wasn't fully upfront at the level of danger that I was probably exposed to before I left, but the pride that they had in knowing that their mom had done that and had come back with those stories that I came back with, I think that that's invaluable. So I'd never tell a young woman to not go there, no.
Having said that, how important do you think it is, based on your experience and your conversations with them, that they know the people, the customs, what to do, what not to do when they're parachuted into a new, very dangerous place? And
that's the interesting thing. So the big networks parachute. The freelancers don't. And I don't know really what the network is, but from my sense of things, these are people who'd been there long before CNN was covering Iraq. Right? So the big networks parachute people in when they know there's going to be a massive offensive, when they know that liberation is going to happen, when they know that the referendum is happening in Kurdistan and there could be violence. And that's the nature. That's not criticizing anybody. That's the nature of, you need to be there when stuff is happening. The women that I met were there before. They had developed relationships with fixers who are invaluable to anybody trying to get anything done, because there isn't going to obviously be there's going to be language issues. You need a translator. You need
so they don't speak the language. The freelancers, in the main, they don't speak the language.
One woman I met was fluent in Arabic. Yeah,
that's pretty handy.
Very handy.
Yeah,
very handy.
Talk to us for a second here about the economics of journalism today and what it will and what it won't support. Because you and I were talking off camera before we started here about the fact that there was a time when local news was a huge moneymaker, and if local news stations wanted to, they could send their own people off to do international stories. They wouldn't wait for the big network to do it. They'd just do it themselves.
Yeah.
What do you see out there now?
Those days are long gone.
None of that, eh?
No, none of that. And I think, I think that that's the economics of the day. That is the reality of the day, is that people are getting their information differently. And that news organizations can't send money left, right, and center. And so they decide what is their niche going to be. So for City, the niche is Toronto's news. For international stuff, obviously, they're flying people left, right, and center. But, there was a fantastic symposium that I went to on the death of the Bureau. The expensive, Beijing Bureau, where you've got a whole team sitting there waiting for something to happen, and you're filing little pieces until something big happens. Yep. It's changing. I think the demand for information and for knowledge and for learning is higher than it's ever been, but the way that we're receiving it is different.
Let's finish up on this. Some good news for you.
Some amazingly exciting, fantastic news for me.
Well, okay, I was being a little more low-key about it, but I can
sorry,
see
I'm very excited.
I can tell. Where are you going?
I'm going to W5.
That's a pretty hot show.
It's the longest running news magazine show in North America.
Is that right?
It is the longest running. So it beats,
Longer than 60 minutes?
Yes, it does.
Huh.
And it's the most watched. And they do long form. You know, we could spend 20 minutes talking about how much I love this idea of recognizing that 1 minute and 30 seconds is not enough time to do anything justice. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that I've done at City. This latest time I've been there, 7 years. I've done lots of great investigations. They have given me so much, and I have a huge value for local news. I'm at the end of my desire for cramming, for everything being black and white.
You need a bigger world right now.
You need some gray.
Your vistas need to be a little broader right now. And they're going to let you do that at W5?
That show is about taking time, about thinking, about telling stories, about covering it in a huge, broad spectrum where at the end of it, you'll have watched something and you'll not be saying, yeah, but what about this? Well, what about that? So I'm so excited to be working with this team over there. I just feel as though there's a lot of great stuff ahead.
Why do I get the feeling one of the first pitches you're going to make to the news
I've already
director
made
there
it. If you're saying Iraq.
to go back to Iraq? Yes, that's what I was thinking.
I have already made the pitch of going back to Iraq, and one of the things when I was in discussions with them, they said, if you come to us, you won't have to be going on your vacation to be doing stories in Iraq. It was like, yeah,
you'll actually get paid to go do those stories.
I have a couple of great stories that need to be told in Iraq right now. So
we look forward to seeing them.
Yeah,
Avery, congrats on the new gig, and we wish you lots of luck with it.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.